Vishnupada Paramam Sapravichakachara Stutara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Nanta Kori Vaishnava Vrinda Ki ISKCON BBD Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki. Oh, glorious is symbol of devotees. Oh, glorious is symbol of devotees. Oh, glorious is symbol of devotees. Oh, glorious to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Gaur Premananda. Hari Hari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text number 10, chapter 7, canto 3, further inquiries by Vidura. Yadatena vinamusya Pumsaratma viparyaya Pratiyata upadrusta Swashirashchedanatika. Yat, thus. Atena, purpose or meaning. Vina, without. Amusya, of such a one. Pumsa, the living entity. Atma viparyaya, upset about self-identification. Pratiyate, so appear. Upadrusta, of the official onlooker. Shvashira, own head. Chedanadika, cutting off. Translation: the living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off. Purport: a teacher in school once threatened his pupil that he would cut off the pupil's head and hang it on the wall, and so the child could see how this head had been cut off. Child became frightened and stopped his mischief. Similarly, the miseries of the pure soul and the disruption of his self-identification are managed by the external energy of the Lord, which controls these mischievous living entities who want to go against the will of the Lord. Actually, there is no bondage or misery for the living entity, nor does he ever lose his pure knowledge. In his pure consciousness, he thinks a little seriously about his position. When he thinks a little seriously about his position, he can understand that he is eternally subordinate to the mercy of the Supreme, and that his attempt to become one with the Supreme Lord is a false illusion. Life after life, the living entity falsely tries to lord it over material nature and become the Lord of the material world. But there is no tangible result. At last, when frustrated, he gives up his material activities and tries to become one with the Lord, and can speculate with much jugglery of words but without success. These activities are performed under the dictation of illusory energy. The experience is compared to the experience of one having his head cut off in a dream. The man whose head has been cut off also sees that his head has been cut off. If a person's head is severed, he loses his power to see. Therefore, if a man sees that his head has been cut off so many times, it means that he thinks like that in hallucination. Similarly, a living entity is eternally subordinate to the Supreme Lord, and he has this knowledge with him, but artificially thinks that he's God himself. And that although he's God, he has lost his knowledge due to Maya. This conception has no meaning. Just as there is no meaning to seeing one's head being cut off. This is the process by which knowledge is covered. And because this artificial, rebellious condition of the living entity gives him all troubles, it is to be understood that he should take to his normal life as a devotee of the Lord and be relieved from misconceptions of being God. The so-called liberation of thinking oneself God is that last reaction of avidya by which the living entity is entrapped. The conclusion is that a living entity deprived of eternal transcendental service to the Lord becomes illusion in many ways. Even in his conditional life, he is the eternal servant of the Lord. His servitude under the spell of illusory Maya is also a manifestation of his eternal condition of service. Because he has rebelled against the service of the Lord, he is therefore put in the service of Maya. He is still serving, but in a perverted manner. And when he wants to get out of service under material bondage, he next desires to become one with the Lord. This is another illusion. Best course, therefore, is to surrender unto the Lord, and thus get rid of the illusory Maya for good, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Devi Hi Esha Gunamayi Mama Maya Ratyaya Mameva Ye Prapajante Mayamem Tam Etam Taranti Te Hamagyanati Berandisyatinan Savakaya Chaksu Militam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha Durgame Padimendasya Skalipate Katemaho Swakripa Yustadanana Shanta Valamnaram. Thank you for coming to class. I see we've got a few more people here. I'm so happy about that because this is just such a profound sloka there. We'll read it again for those who might have come late. The living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who's dreaming that he sees his head being cut off. So this sloka totally intrigued me, that there's a sort of a violent dream. And then at the beginning of the purport, Srila Prabhupada, do you remember what Srila Prabhupada said about his experience at school? That that a teacher said to him, well, actually, we assume that Srila Prabhupada was in the class there, that the teacher explained to them that if they didn't behave themselves, he'd cut off their head and he'd hang it up on the wall for them to see. Right? So we have to... Poor Sophia's in shock. So we have to understand where Srila Prabhupada was when that happened, that Srila Prabhupada spoke quite a bit about his education when he was young. He was educated at a Scotch college in Calcutta. It was by some Presbyterian Scottish ministers, and obviously they were fans of strict discipline, so we couldn't imagine somebody saying that to a school child these days and not have the anti-terrorist squad bear down on the school, shut the school down, get everybody to walk out with their hands up in the air. So, but, you know, it's a different era. I know when I was young, I graduated into a college where it was run by some Christian brothers, Catholic brothers, and my first contact, I think it was my first day, that this brother was smiling at me rather oddly, and I'm sort of smiling back, and then he grabbed me by the ear and just pulled my ear down to the ground, and about 2 inches away there was a piece of paper on the ground, so the message was pick up the paper, right? So this is his first contact with me. So we can understand that, you know, this school system, it was there to instill fear and subjugation. Of course, there was an element of masochism and, you know, some sort of sadism on the part of the teachers that we understood. But it's still there to instill a sense of fear and subjugation. So this is the purport of the sloka. It's a very relevant point that Srila Prabhupada made, even though it's very, very frightening, that material energy, well, it's going to punish you if you actually think that you're going to lord over material energy. And that threat is there. It's like in the sloka it says, it's just like a man who sees his head being cut off in a dream. So there's a similarity there. So we don't get to lord it over Maya, but we're in the position of serving Maya. Maya is in charge of the material world. We can never lord it over her. So the purpose of this example is that if we think that we can lord it over her, we get the ultimate threat, which causes us to suffer. And because we've been suffering in our life, all of our life, we can relate to this. It is indeed a brave or foolish person who will sometimes tell you that they're not suffering. Has anybody told you that? Every now and then, no, I'm not suffering. Ah, okay. Well, do you mean now you're not suffering right now, right at this moment? You're completely comfortable in your seat. You're not itching, or you're not too hot, you're not too cold, you're not hungry. Not thinking about some mental distress in the back of your mind that someone's causing you and how you're going to deal with it today. You're not. You're perfectly happy, great, loving it. Well, just wait. Just wait a few days, maybe wait a few weeks, a few years, wait a few decades. Srila Prabhupada, his brush with ill health was well documented. And he always used to say to us, don't think that this won't happen to you. My parents, I remember, and their friends, when I was young, they were all discussing their illnesses when they got together, you know, about their double bypasses and triple bypasses and the veins taken out of their legs to be put somewhere else. And I thought, oh, it's so boring. Don't they have anything else to discuss, you know? But as you reach the ripe old age of 60, 70 and 80, well, that's what you talk about. I don't know anyone over the age of 70 that hasn't suffered from something, some medical scare, cancer, or heart attack, something, over the age of 70. I haven't. So, just, you know, that's just one example of suffering. I'm not going to bore you on the varieties of suffering. There is so much out there that we have to endure in our lives, just in case you think of one of these morbid persons that's not happy until they see everybody else is suffering. Oh, in fact, I want to talk about suffering. We're sort of going to go a little bit deep here. It's pretty profound. I'm so excited. I haven't sort of come across this before, but there's different philosophical viewpoints that people have in their approach to suffering. So maybe we can analyse a few of these. First of all, we would like to mention that there's some people say, why do we suffer? Why do we suffer? I don't know. Got no idea why we suffer. So this viewpoint is often held by the agnostic. You know, the agnostic, he's thinking, maybe there's a God. Maybe there isn't a God. Maybe there was just a big bang and we all come about. Well, I don't know. So what is the solution? What can you do? Well, suffering, just have to tolerate it. You know, just find good in life and appreciate it. And so in that way, suffering really is just a part of the life. It has no meaning and it's just part and parcel of the life. And the agnostics thinking, well, what can you do about it anyway? So does anyone relate to that? Yeah, okay, we can drop you off here if you like. Okay, we'll keep going. So, there are others who actually believe that, you know, suffering comes about by the laws of nature. And that, you know, laws of nature, well, they just come out by chance, you know, that just happen. So, who would think that? the atheists. So it's just the laws of chance, there's no God, that material nature, that, it just happened, evolution, it just come about from something that evolved. There was no God in sight. And God, well, who is God? Karl Marx, I used to quote him when I was young, God is the opiate of the people. So then the atheists say, well, there was like the evolution of the species. So with all evolution, then we also got disease that come along, emotional distress. We don't know how it happened, but, it come about. As we evolve, so the microbes must have evolved, the germs and different viruses. So this is a part of our evolution process. Of course, the evolutionists is quite interesting. If they take it to the full extent, then perhaps we'll evolve into robots, because artificial intelligence is smarter than human beings. And we don't have souls, so why can't we just evolve into robots? Well, so the atheist, so how does the atheist deal with suffering? It's quite interesting, actually, because they believe that actually science and the scientists are able to analyse the laws of nature, because it's all the laws of nature, of course, all this evolution of nature. And then when they analyse these laws, they can overcome them. Just random laws, So just like old age, that creeps in, old age creeps into everybody's life. So that must be a set of laws of nature. Then we'll find out what these laws are, and then we'll reverse this process. So it's going on. It's called regeneration. So many scientists are working on this process, reverse old age. If plants get sick, then we'll do some genetic engineering with material nature, and they're having success. So there's some success there. So admittedly, that's there. So some miseries have been counteracted, like bacteria, that deals with infections, microsurgery. I mean, it's prolonged so many people's lives. I'll put my hand up for that one too. So this is the benefit of science, but the problem is that the death rate still remains 100%. Right? And, where have I lost it? And you can guarantee that will remain 100%. Srila Prabhupada always says that actually these scientists, they want a post-dated blank check. Give us a blank check, post-date it, and in the future we'll come up with a solution. We'll sort of stop this from happening, because we'll overcome the laws of nature. But the fact is that death will always be there, and along with death we have two other things. In Sanskrit we have Mrityu, death, and we have Jara and Vyadi. So do you know what those two are? Jara and Vyadi? Sophia? Jara, old age, and Vyadi, disease. So they come along, they're all in hand. So first comes Jara, and then he brings his sister, Vyadi. That's in the 7th canto, I think. And then, of course, they introduce Mrityu when they feel, this body's useless. It's time to change this body, and Mrityu comes along. So that is always there. So the scientists cannot conquer this problem. So we have another type of person who considers suffering, that there's the laws of karma and reincarnation. And if you believe in karma and reincarnation, then you know that it's run by some persons, that some gods created these laws, that, it's action for reaction, and whether it's the demigods or it's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's definitely a person. It's not mechanical. It's just not like an evolutionary thing like the last one. So, and there's an action and there's a equal reaction. So if we understand suffering to be like that, according to the laws of karma, what do we do about it? How do we counteract it? We do good things, good actions. So therefore we, avoid the bad actions, and then we can avoid the bad karma. But even the good actions still have that element of suffering, because even the mode of goodness is mode, it's a mode, goodness, passion and ignorance. So therefore there is suffering involved, because Bhagavad Gita says, Brahma Bhuvanaloka, from the highest planet down to the lowest planet, from Lord Brahma himself, who is almost the total 99.99% of personification of goodness, he still has to take another birth. So birth and death, that means suffering. So all the places of suffering. And the other thing is that it's hard to do good things all the time. You know, if you want to counteract your karma, you do good things, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. I remember once I had a pop-up stall in Tamworth, and this gentleman come along and said, I just need some money to get a nice place of shelter for the night. So I said, yeah, okay. You know, he's a bit hard-pressed. I gave him $5 or something. And then I just saw him head over to KFC across the shop there and just buy a chicken or something like that. That's where my money went. So that goes on. That's just an example. So, you know, of course there's the Jains who go to the extreme. Have you ever met a Jain? So in India you see they wear masks and they sort of have a brush, and they're sort of really careful that they don't step on any ants. They eat very, very sattvic food, and they make sure there's no bugs or insects in the food. But still, they get another birth anyway. So that's that philosophy. Then there's the other philosophy that you suffer. People say, well, will of God. You know, we're suffering, but it's the will of God. God exists and we're suffering for a purpose. We don't know what the purpose is, but God's making us suffer. So it must be for a good purpose. Otherwise, why would God make us suffer? So this is in our life. We have to put up with this life because God is doing it for our benefit. So who preaches this philosophy? Any ideas? Christians, thank you, yeah. And Islamics, so suffering is a good God, you know, that God can't be bad. So what's the counteraction for this? How do you counteract suffering there? Well, it's God's plan. You have to accept it. And it's almost in the same category as the atheist. You know, where, not the atheist, sorry, the agnostic, where what can you do about it? But the difference between Christianity and the agnostic is that there's love behind it. We're suffering because God loves us, you know, so therefore we can tolerate that. So the agnostic doesn't see that. But what we're discussing in the Bhagavatam, what's being brought out here in the Bhagavatam, is that suffering doesn't exist. Suffering doesn't exist. We're not suffering because it's not real. It's not happening to us. So how can we be suffering? So there comes another philosophy, and that's the philosophy of the Buddhists and the Voidists and the impersonalists, the Mayavadis, that all of this is not true, that we're not actually suffering. But so all these philosophies, you put them together, and they've all got a bit of truth in them. There's truth in part, just like we have the laws of nature. We believe in laws of nature, laws of gravity, and there's the material laws that if you obey them, you don't suffer. Like you see a door, you don't walk into a door, you walk around the door because it's solid. And there's the laws of karma and the laws of action and reaction, and we understand that, and that's so all these laws are there. So understanding why we suffer is not complete when we just have one reason for doing it. We just have one faith and one philosophy, and it's just a partial understanding. So the devotee, he can understand all of them, and we accept it. We accept gravity, we accept chemistry, that it works, and we like to live good sattvic lives, and we also accept Krishna into our life. Krishna's will. So how many times do we say, oh, well, that was Krishna's arrangement? Krishna's doing it for our purification. So, you know, something happens for your purification, Prabhu. So it's not karma, it's just your purification. So we have so many different cliches. So we believe in Krishna's will as well. And then we come to today's verse. The living entity is in distress regarding its self-identity. It has no factual background. So that means that actually Bhagavatam, what we're saying is that it's not happening at all. Suffering is due to my illusion, ignorance, and I know it's not me. So Bhagavatam, it gives us this example of a dream. So in a dream, we think we're suffering. All of us have experienced these dreams. I mean, I would love to share some dreams with all of you, and we could have a great time because, you know, but the common concurrent factor in a lot of these dreams is that there is suffering. Sometimes we have happy dreams, but more often than not, we don't. Srila Prabhupada, he talks about, very often he talks about a dream where someone's been eaten by a tiger. It's actually quite interesting. Now, I just heard Indradumna Maharaj talk about Vrindavan in the just at the turn of the century, around the 1900s, where there used to be big forests around Vrindavan, and the sages would be living in the forest in little thatched huts, and the Bengal tigers would be roaming around. And so the huts were rather flimsy, so at a different point in time the tiger would break into the hut and eat the sage. So I could understand where Srila Prabhupada was saying sometimes we dream that we've been eaten by a tiger. What they did to counteract it was they had this bowl of sugar water out the front, so the tiger would come up to the front of the hut, and they liked sweet things, so he would lap up the sugar water and go away. But you can imagine the sage being in the hut there, and here's a lap, 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 and he falls asleep, and he's dreaming of the tiger, and he doesn't know whether he's really being eaten by the tiger or not. He can't tell. So sometimes dreams are so vivid that we can't tell that we're in this dream. So the example is the modern day. So we can compare it to going to the movies, right? So we go to the movies and we shut out our material, you know, body. We sit there and our consciousness becomes attracted and identifies with the character in the movie. And if the character's in danger, then our heart starts to beat and we're sort of very apprehensive, start perspiring. And then when the character's happy, we're happy. So that's why people go to the movies, to experience these sensations. Also, if you want to feel these emotions, or just simply get sucked into some of the video games that are out there. If you want to know about them, ask the kids. I don't know about now, I've lost track of them. But they just become completely absorbed. You can't even get them away from the movie just to eat a meal. So that's the illusion there, that's the dream. So Krishna's illusions, the material energy that is created, it's also like that, but it's a bit deeper, it goes deeper. Because the fact is, even though it's an illusion, still the illusion can never be 100% complete. It's said to be an example like a mirage in the desert. So to have a mirage, you know that water exists, you know that water is actually factual, right? But when you look in the desert, you see this blue haze, and so you think there's water in the desert because you identify with the water, but actually that's your illusion. This is what happens in our lives. So our lives are continually like this recurring dream. So how do we live the dream? Well, modern society, they actually like to dictate our dream, tell us what makes us happy. So we acquire what society tells us to get, you know, a house, a car, and I don't want to go into it, you know, in different ways according to your means. And when you get all this, are you happy? Well, is that it? Is that all there is? So I've got an example. I was just speaking with my godbrothers yesterday. I've got the example of Byron Bay, right? So a friend, my godbrother, mentioned that the Byron Bay is a destination that's overrated. That yet so many people go there expecting so much joy and happiness when they get there for their holiday or their sort of end of their journey there for a while where they're going to stay. But when they get there, they're not sure where to find the happiness that they're looking for. I know one time we went out on Sankirtan, or often when you go out on Sankirtan at night there in Byron Bay, all these young people are clustered together and they're in one group. So we walk past them on the street. They're outside this nightclub, right? Then we go around the block and we see them on the other side, next to this other nightclub. That other one was any good. All the people going to the other one. So they go across the road to that one. That one's better like that. So they're always crossing over trying to find where the action is. But there's no action. The only action is the Sankirtan party on that night. So that's the desire. But you just get a drop of enjoyment, material enjoyment, compared to what you thought you'd get. That's what it is. So Govinda Das sings, Kamala Tala Jala Jivada Talamala. Life is just like a drop on the lotus leaf. It's there's a saying, beware of unreal expectations. I just also ran into a friend of mine who come to see me. He sees me every 10 years or so. Way out of the past. What do you call it? A blast from the past, right? Peter. So Pete's booked 7 boat cruises in a row, right? He's going to enjoy. He loves boat cruises, right? So the fact, I remember one thing happened to him on the last boat cruise, that he's walking down the gangplank and he scratched his leg on a rusty nail. And he got infected, he got staph, and he ended up in the hospital on the place that he was visiting, and then they wheeled him back on the boat in a wheelchair, right? So that was his last boat cruise, but he's got 7 more he's going to enjoy on these ones. So he strikes his shoulders saying, well, that's life, you know, so that's the life of an agnostic. You know, you put up with it and bear with it. It's all a dream. So what is there in material happiness? So we try to hang on. We try to keep that happiness just there within our grasp. So something's happening. So with that we try to hang on, but ultimately we do have to let go. As we know, death is 100%. So something's happening there. So it's not real. It's just like the movies, you know, like in our life. We don't say it's illusion. No, it's actually happening. Just like even in the movies, there's an actor and you know that he's real. And so we have a real situation. Material energy is real. But we're just an illusion about how we're thinking that we're going to enjoy it. So Krishna explained in Bhagavad Gita, Maya Dakshina Prakriti Surite Suracharam, that his inferior energy is sort of dictating all this. So we're not really doing anything in this world. We're just observing this like a dream or a film, or in a film that you sort of, you know, the director, he wants to make you laugh, he wants to make you feel all these emotions, and he evokes all these emotions that you'd like to feel or see. And that's what Maya's doing on that deep level. So by our real life's desire, by our karma, we're ordering a particular experience. So Maya Devi, she's looking at us, look at our karma, look at our what we'd like, and said, well, you've done this and you've done that, so I'll custom make a story for you. How about that? You can live in the story and then you can live it out. You can be happy, you can be distressed, and sometimes you can do what you like. Other times you just have to do exactly what Maya does to you. It's just like sometimes some untoward thing happens. And how do we look at it? It's Maya, it's material energy. This is our lot in life. You know, we don't know what it is. We can't really take it. So in that sense, we become puppets. It's just like seeing that picture in the Bhagavad Gita. That, you know, Maya's got the strings there, and you know, living entities dancing along according to the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. So that is our position. So once we're in this illusion that our free will, the only free will we have is that we can pick out what story we'd like to be in. That's our desire. We have material desires. So, okay, which story do you want? So, but even when we get this story of our life, we're not very happy with it. We're dissatisfied. That's that element there. We're not sure what we want. We're not happy in our lot in life because it's the material energy. It's like Prabhupada says, it's oil and water. How can we be happy? Oil doesn't actually go with water, or a fish in water, a fish out of water. So in this way, we go from one life to the next trying to look for that sort of situation where we're happy. So, but we're always serving Maya, always there, until we realise that Maya is actually God's inferior energy, and I'm not going to be happy no matter how hard I try. So what else is there? There's the superior energy of Krishna, his eternal superior energy. And whatever we think in this material energy, we're still, sometimes we think that we lord it over material energy. We don't need Krishna. Just like some people might accumulate so much, may become a mega millionaire or billionaire or some huge political figure that everybody adores. They think, well, this guy's made it to the top of the heap. But the fact is that that person is still dictated by nature. He can't stop himself from going bald, going grey, going deaf, going blind, or he's in a conference, excuse me, I've got to go to the bathroom. Right? It's a call of nature, right? So he's still a servant of nature. It's just like we can't get out of it, so we become victims of this illusory energy. Arjuna was saying, why do I do things as if I'm compelled by force? Well, Krishna says it's the lust. You want it to be forced, like this is a movie that you're playing out. It's can be compared to, this is like a prison house of material energy. You've got this prison house and we're serving, it's like someone in prison is serving the government. The government's got him in prison and he's serving the government in that form as a prisoner, right? He's not out of the system, he's in the system, he's a prisoner. So this is how we are. So the only way we can understand that we're not in this situation where we're bound up by Maya is to not identify with the illusion at all. Identify with the reality. The Buddhists and the Mayavadis, they can't do that because they say there's no reality. Reality doesn't exist. So that's not very satisfying because actually you have no relationship, you have no identity with anything. It's like going into an empty room and having no chair, no glass of water, nothing, no light. There might be some temporary happiness in it that you're not suffering from outside forces, but there is nothing there. So there's no relationship. The real relationship is identifying with the real Jivera, Swarup Krishna, Nitya Das. Always a servant of Krishna, doing Krishna's will no matter what. So why not be Krishna's servant in a happy way? Have the real thing, real wealth and real pleasure, and then the suffering goes away. So sometimes people ask that question, so the devotees don't suffer? The pure devotees, they don't suffer? Not really. We don't suffer because all the suffering in this world is an illusion, like it says here. So in this world we're not identifying with this illusion. So even though the suffering is there, we're seeing it as a part of our evolution, that we're actually detached from this body, and even though it's happening, the suffering is there, discomfort is there, but still we're solid in our relationship with Krishna. So we've disentangled ourselves from the Maya. We've taken out the puppet strings. We're walking out of the movie. I don't like this movie anymore, and I don't want to see this movie anymore. Instead, I want to become attracted to Krishna, and I want to be in his movie, right? So Krishna's movie is not controlled by Mahamaya, it's controlled by Yogamaya, Krishna's eternal loving potency. And so this movie, everyone enjoys falling in love with Krishna. So that's where we want to go. So that's the slogan for today. Living entities in distress regarding their self-identity. There's no factual background, like a man whose dreams that he sees his head cut off. Are there any questions or comments? Anybody want to talk about the dreams? We all good? Jai, all glory, Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much.